So we'll turn it once, but typically 3-4 times until the bleeding stops, balling this up and pushing it into that wound, to that area that you may have felt a fast flowing bleed or a pulse, and you're keeping it there. Literally put it on that extremity, put this fluffy part, gauze, on top of the wound.
So you're gonna show me how to do the duct tape paracord thing. How do we do that?
So instead of using your kind of fishing line or suture line, doing improvised stitches, what I would typically do, and it's very similar to those commercial grade bandages that have almost like little zip ties to them. So what I want to do is I'm going to prepare the area to accept the duct tape. So I'm just going to put it on the skin. So when I put the duct tape on, it's going to have a better surface area to stick, because
this might not be the best duct tape.
Yeah, it might not be the best. So we'll see how it does.
It's not Gorilla Tape.
And you don't want to get right up against the wound, because I'll show you.
This isn't exactly skin, but I guess it's supposed to be similar.
Yeah. So what you're doing now is taking a little section of paracord. You're basically just lining it like that and rolling it over just like that. And I like doing it this way because when we put it on the skin, it just have more surface area to attach to the skin. So you can do it the other way where you're rolling it over here, but then you're contending with just maybe an inch of duct tape to work with. So instead of doing that, I'd rather do it like this, place it kind of away from the wound and then duct tape down. And you're doing the same thing on the other side. And you have all this surface area to help you stick to that wound. So again, not directly up against it, because what you're gonna do next is, let's say you have your sewing kit, and everyone should have a gear repair kit. And instead of going into the skin, you're going into the paracord. And then you're going into the other side. Wow. And you can much easier do that. And then as you're closing the wound, let's say you're just closing this part over here. So you can close that and it brings that area closer together.
Yeah.
And as you do that all the way down, then you're able to kind of approximate that wound edge. And that's all you really want to be doing.
I guess this tape would be going around the...
So if you put more tape around there, especially if you're using more adhesive duct tape, it's not going to do this. So the tape that I typically carry on me, like it would never do that. It's going to stick on there. So this is what I would recommend instead of trying to suture yourself, because you're going to introduce things, you're going to have to sterilize your stuff, have that separate setup.
It's going to be painful.
And you can, most importantly, you can evaluate that wound, you can change bandages, you can put the stuff on top of it. Definitely something that I would highly recommend that you practice doing.
Is there a terminology for that? How would you describe what this is?
I would say that this is like a bandage for like lacerations that does not require suturing. And if you're just using duct tape and the laceration or the cut is kind of not that deep, not that long, you can literally put a little bit of antibiotic ointment or Vaseline, have a really nice strand of duct tape and torque it over, and then close it and just make sure that it's secure. And that will kind of approximate that wound pretty well as well.
The only thing you gotta worry about is when you pull the duct tape off.
It's gonna like rip open.
Right, so you gotta be careful with that.
So for this one, all you need to do is snip, snip, snip. So you're not even worried about
not even touching it.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of other things in here that I'm sure you would talk about in more detail. We have air release systems, we have chest seals. At what level are you teaching this kind of stuff?
So definitely something that we review, because it's important for the mechanics, because if you just have no idea why you're not breathing properly.
You know what?
Yeah.
We have you here.
Yeah.
We only got a doctor in-house once in a while, so how do I use this thing?
Yeah. So chest seals are for kind of sucking chest wounds. That means that you have such a big wound in your chest cavity that it's contending with your upper airway. So if that hole is big enough that air wants to go through your chest instead of your mouth, because it's the fastest way to get to the chest, then you have a problem. That means air is coming in, and the reason why it's not coming out is because, let's say you get shot in your chest and you have breathing issues and you notice that this side of your lungs not moving as much because that pressure is building. Your tissue on top of the wound sometimes is in a layer where air can get into the hole, but because that layer moves around, it's almost like a one-way valve and the air gets trapped. As it gets trapped, it pushes on structures, including your heart, including the blood vessels to the heart, and your blood pressure tanks, your breathing tanks, and you lose consciousness. So Bob got shot in the chest. You're noticing that he's having breathing issues. He might be like doing some of these heaves and you don't know why. So when you kind of evaluate him, if there's like a big old wound, like about this, almost like a loony sized wound, and you're noticing that there's like bubbles coming out and it's making like a suckling sound, just know that air is going in and it's not necessarily leaving. So that becomes a big issue, because as that cavity increases in pressure, that'll push everything to this side. And once that happens, the airway gets compromised, the blood vessels to the heart gets compromised, and everything starts to fail. To prevent that, let's say you're in a firefight, you got shot in the chest, and you know that it's a big caliber round, you want to slap a chest seal on it as fast as you can. So this is a one-way valve where you can put that on. It's very sticky. Air is able to be released this way, but no air is able to come back in. That's your best chance of preventing a lung collapse, and we call that a tension pneumothorax. More important is make sure you're checking for exit wounds. That's why these packages come in twos, and you'll see that one has a valve and one doesn't. Valve's meant for the front end, and as you're rolling the person over and evaluating the exit wound, kind of feeling, saying, look how big that wound is. But if it's just an exit wound, this slapped onto here and take off the adhesive. That way you can prevent tension pneumothorax from a sucking chest wound. If you are in that firefight situation and you don't have a valve kind of set up, slap something on there that just completely covers it. So it can be as simple as you're taking out your Israeli bandage or whatever bandage, and you have some wrapper and you're just slapping it on there and taping it onto the chest. So that's
just
kind of like
to prevent that air from going in there.
Yeah, to prevent that air going in there.
Okay. Our survivor has escaped the clutches of the bloodthirsty marauders, and now he's en route to his bug out location. But he's so excited because he was victorious that he wasn't paying attention, and he tripped over on a log and he rolled down a hill and he broke his ankle, we'll say. What is he going to do now? What is this? How does this work?
So this is mobile splint from Sam Medical. Really cool part about this is very light and pretty versatile, because for sitting pads, for like, let's say if you're just camping, or even if you have like a jet boil and are cooking food on the go as you're escaping, you can literally just do that around your thing and light the jet boil so you're not getting a bunch of wind. But for fractures specifically,
multi-purpose.
Yeah, multi-purpose. You can use this for neck fractures. You can also use it for long bone fractures as well. But the big mistake that I see with these, because this is foam that's encasing like an aluminum metal. A lot of people kind of do this and splint it, and they call that good. But that doesn't do anything. What they're missing is you actually need to form it. So you either form it as a C, and it kind of shows you a C over here, and that makes it a little more rigid. But what I love teaching my students is, like, if you're gonna splint it and your main objective is to keep the thing as immobile and straight as possible, turn that C into a T or an upside down T. And that becomes really darn rigid. So really rigid, and then you can kind of splint your area.
Yeah, so the difference between, that's almost immovable.
Yeah.
Compared to...
And a really fast way to make a splint.
Yeah, you can't even...
Yeah, it's very hard to bend that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they show you that on the instructions? They don't even show you that.
Nope, they do not.
That's why you spend 10 years in medical school, guys.
Exactly. And even doctors, this is like when we splint in the ERs with like fiberglass, with plaster. So some physicians don't know how to use this as well.
All right, so I broke my leg, doc. What do I do?
When you break your leg, or if you suspect anything's broken, you got to remove that boot. Don't splint on top of it, because if you have a bleed up out there, let's say something punctured it, or your bone's sticking out, that's going to change your management completely. So know that, like, once you expose this, let's say you cut the pants and whatnot, and you see it, if there's bones sticking out through the skin, the next objective, let's say you splint everything and everything's fine, is you're gonna need antibiotics. Like, it's almost like a guarantee that you'll need antibiotics, and typically strong antibiotics. When they come into the ER and they have bones sticking out, they typically get IV antibiotics. That's the next big thing. It's like, what does it look like?
Infection goes into your bone.
Oh, it's big time bad.
You're screwed.
Yeah. So let's say there's no bone sticking out. So you have a chance to get out of this without a severe infection. every kind of injury that you have that's related to bones, fractures, sprains, you want to be looking at the skin, you want to be looking at the pulses. So there's 2 big pulses that I want you to be very comfortable doing. There's a bone right on the inside of the ankle, so you're basically hooking behind it and pushing forward, and that's your big pulse over here. So you're feeling that, and you're also, if you can't feel that one, there's also a pulse over here between the big toe and the toe next to it. The bones come together in a V, and you can feel that pulse over there. And the reason why you do that is because if the bones are so kind of unaligned that it's pushing against blood vessels and causing that kind of basically strangulation, this rest of your foot's gonna die off very quickly. It's like putting on a tourniquet there forever and you're not noticing that that's an issue. The majority of a lot of fractures, the key is to get things straight. So if that was the case, you might need to improvise some kind of traction device where you're hooking your ankle up to, let's say, a tree and gently scooting yourself back and just leaning back a little bit so things straighten out. So once you do all that, you kind of see the skin's intact, they have pulses that are good. You want to be seeing, like, can you still move it? So are your nerves intact? So you're moving it, you're feeling your foot. Yeah, I can still feel and wiggle that. It's just like here, I'm not sure if it's fractured or not, but I can't put any weight on it. Another pro tip for you, if you don't have an x-ray in the field, right? How do you typically know that there's a fracture? If I am percussing, so bumping the long bones, and you're jumping and kicking me, I would suspect a fracture there. If I'm doing this and you're like, yeah, that's kind of sore, you have a lower likelihood of fracture. It can be as important to know that skill, and we typically do this on like football sidelines and soccer sidelines.
You have to tap this bone, the shin bone?
Yeah, you have to tap long bone. So let's say if it was like a leg fracture over here and I'm tapping on the bone and they're like jolting in pain, I would suspect a fracture over here. Same thing with the foot. If I'm tapping the bones on the either side of the area or tapping the bones of your toes and you're like jumping and kicking me, that would be a high likelihood of fracture.
Because that vibration is going into the nerve.
Yeah, so the most painful part of the bone is the periosteum. So that's the layer outside of each bone. And once that gets broken, as soon as there's a little bit of vibration, that makes you scream. One tool that I had, and I don't necessarily recommend that everyone has it, but is a tuning fork. So like you think it's like for music, but on sidelines, specifically sports sidelines, you can hit the tuning fork, put it on the long bone, and if that guy's like kicking you, you pretty much can say like that, there's a fracture there. So like I said, these SAM splints are really nice because they're really light and versatile. Another thing that's useful is if you don't have this and you're improvising and you're making this out of, let's say, sticks or something like that, you want it to be fairly comfortable. So you might need to wrap this with some kind of cushioning. It might be your spare t-shirt or something like that, just so that there's a little bit of cushioning against something hard. This has a little bit of foam, so that's to give you some leeway. But this can go up over here, and you would continue kind of forming this all the way up to the ankle. It's almost like a horse stirrup, specifically for ankle fractures. And you're basically putting it up here so that you're not able to flex this down. Because once your ankle's able to flex like this, it just enables that bones to shift and fractures to get worse. So if you know it's straight and it's kind of in this saddle position, then all you need to do is you're wrapping and wrapping and wrapping so that it stays in place. Using Israeli.
You could do this with anything, I guess, eh? Like
yeah, you can wrap it with cloth. You can use like triangle bandages. You can use it with cut up stuff from like your pants or your shirt. As long as you're splinting above, let's say it's a joint because we said it's our ankle. You're splinting above the joint and below the joint. So that's the foot and the shin area. Then that means that that's stable. Let's say if it was like a leg fracture, you would be doing the joint above and below. So you would be making sure this doesn't move and this doesn't move. So that splinted site is a decent sized splint. Yeah. And I have videos on that as well because
this wouldn't be long enough for that.
It might be if you had 2 of them and you would do, like, let's say if it was a fracture over here, you might be able to get away with 2 of them like that. Now, if we're talking about a Conor McGregor type break, we got exposed bone. We got to snap that back in there, right? So the level of infection rate is going to be very, very high, but at the same time, like if it's not approximated, so if the bone's completely snapped and you don't bring it close, it will never really heal properly. So if it does heal, it's gonna heal this part over here and heal this part over here, and it's just gonna be a floating thing. You can't really walk on that.
Right.
Yeah. So if you are able to do that, as much antibiotics as possible, clean the wound, and all you're doing is you're basically holding the ankle like this. Let's say it was over here, and you're just leaning back.
You really
a
need
bit.
somebody to help you do that.
Yeah. So either that, or it's as simple as getting a triangle bandage or any type of material. You can literally make a loop that goes around your ankle.
Yeah.
And you tie that to a tree, and you're basically just leaning back till it kind of slips back in place.
Yeah, you always see in the movies where, you know, they snap it back into place and the guy just faints.
Yeah.
Is that how it works? Or
I mean, people faint all the time at the sight of blood, and for pain
probably
too.
for better, right?
For better.
I know
yeah.
I've been in some accidents where I've had to, you know, there've been serious accidents where I've never broken a bone, fortunately, but the pain was so overwhelming. The body goes into shock, which is a natural kind of protective mechanism, I presume, where it's just shooting endorphins and you don't feel anything. So
it's a good thing, especially if you're treating that person, if they just pass out and they're still breathing on their own and they're okay and they have a pulse, that's perfect, because then you can do what you need to.
When I was in an accident, I went through a car windshield. I was racing my buddies on my bike. I had a big gash taken out. You could see my shin bone moving in there. Didn't feel a thing. Is that how it typically is for everybody?
Everyone's a little different, but it's not surprising that you had that type of reaction. And number two, if you're having pain elsewhere and you don't feel, that's one of the reasons why we're feeling, it can be the case where you severed the nerve. So that bone shard may have like just cut that nerve and you no longer have feeling there. That's important to know, because if you are able to get to like a surgeon, they're wanting to reconnect those nerves, or at least bring them as close as possible.
Wow. One thing I wanted to ask you, this is completely unrelated. I got these EpiPens.
Ah, yes.
Now, how would I and when would I use something like this?
For upper airway or severe allergic reactions. So like if you have a known allergy and you're feeling like your throat's swelling up, if you have like puffy eyes, or you're feeling kind of tingling in your mouth, or if your blood pressure is going all out of whack, I would highly recommend that, number one, you own one of these in some kind of form. So you can get epinephrine vials, or you can get different brands that aren't crazy expensive like this. And you're basically taking this out of the case, and there's a little blue safety thing. You pop this off. I think this is a live one.
Yeah.
So you pop this off, and you're basically putting that orange part to the upper outer of a thigh. So that's like a very muscular area. You're just not really going to damage much. And you're basically going really forcefully into there.
Pulp Fiction style.
Pulp Fiction style into that thigh. And you don't necessarily need to take off your pants or anything like that. The needle should go through the pants into that thigh. And you're basically waiting 10, 20 seconds. And afterwards, when you take it out, you can massage it. One of the things that I do teach in my course is how to disassemble that. Because one thing that a lot of people don't realize, there's 3 extra doses in here.
Really? 3
extra doses in the epinephrine pen. And why that's important is because when you're in the field, let's say no one's coming, you can have something called reflex anaphylaxis, meaning that that same reaction that you had that would take away your airway could happen again as soon as every 15 minutes. So if you have that one EpiPen that you paid $400 or so to buy, you do it once and you feel you're good, and then you're hiking along, getting to your rendezvous site, and you're like, oh shit, like it's coming back.
So do they tell you that on there, on the packaging?
Nope.
So why would they put it in there if they...
So for legal reasons, they have to guarantee they get that dose into you.
Right.
So there's a spring mechanism in there that puts a plunger on, it injects the required amount for adults.
Okay.
Now, if it was like just the bare minimum of amount that you needed, what if it didn't get all the way? What if there was an air bubble there? You wouldn't necessarily get the full dose. So they put 3 extra doses in here. So if you know how to take this apart, you could dose another 3 times.
It's crazy that they wouldn't tell you how to do it.
I mean, for legal standpoints, like if people do it and they get stabbed, or if like someone loses an eye.
Oh, there was 3 in there. You didn't lose them, so it's your fault.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, like that's
why you got to take the course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. I guess we'll talk a little bit about plants, plant medicine. Is there natural herbs that you can use for purposes of disinfecting, or what is something that is almost everywhere that somebody could use for medicinal purposes?
Yeah, so when we think about like disinfectants, specifically with plant medicine, for it to be a true like antibiotic, there's not a whole lot of studies out there. And that's why I wouldn't necessarily be like, hey, if you have 0 antibiotics or have a choice to do antibiotics or do pure plant medicine, just the volume of what you would need to make it like an antibiotic, and it would be a process where you're distilling stuff to make it actually strong. It's just quite vigorous. So proper wound care, like we talked about earlier, is super important, and having environments that are unfavorable to bacteria. So there's a bunch of different plants out there. One that I used specifically on Alone Season 9 was reindeer moss. It has an acid to it. So if you boil that out, keep that water, do that same process over and over and over again and keep that, it becomes a very concentrated acid. Bacteria don't like acid. So
is there iodine in some moss as well?
There are some iodine in moss, like sphagnum moss.
Yeah.
Whether that's a concentration that would kill bacteria is questionable.
Right.
You know, it's like some people say like you can drink it directly, but if there's like animals like pissing and shitting like around there, and you're just directly just putting it in your mouth, that I find it hard to believe that that level of iodine will purify that. So that's the big thing for a lot of these medicinals. Your body does have an ability to heal itself. And if the wound's clean and you're taking good care of it and washing it, sometimes it's confounded with like, oh, I thought like this plant medicine was really effective, when your body would have healed on its own, whether it was there or not. And that's a huge problem with a lot of different medicinal plants, because they don't have that research. They just say, oh, it was used for that, but it was never tested against something else.
Well, I would encourage you guys, if you want to learn more about this stuff, go check out survivaldoctors.com. Sign up for the free, is it 30-day?
30-day free kind of lessons. You'll get access to our library of multiple different videos. You'll get access to live sessions where I'm actively teaching new things to our community. And you also get access to our community group where you can just ask me questions, whether that's a specific thing that's relevant to you and your family, or if it's a survival question as well.
Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and go and check out Dr. Tan's YouTube channel. Let's help get him to, let's go for 50,000 subs. Let's do it. Come on, guys, we can make this work. I know there's going to be at least 50,000 people to watch this video. And I know we all just want doom and gloom, but you got to be pairing it with practical knowledge as well if you really want to survive what's coming. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.